and I'm sorry that you had such a horrible experience. We were actually just talking about experience with different services to try to get you jobs and such. But yeah, welcome guys. We're going to talk about some college stuff. And for some of you that college is like super far away, we're just going to talk about things, education. Your education is so important even now. And I know how difficult your education has been, having to move it to an online forum versus in the classroom. Um, but yeah, so we're just going to talk about some education stuff and just how important it is. Yeah, Suchi.
Okay, so I have two questions. So my first question is, if you are thinking about going to college, but you are not mentally prepared to go far away because you don't feel comfortable. You want to go far away to get that experience, to figure out how to be on your own and live on your own and not depend on your parents. How do you kind of get mentally prepared and feel confident enough to go on your own and be far away?
That's a really great question. I know it is really scary to kind of think about, moving out of your parents' house and, having to do all sorts of stuff on your own. I think now is a great time to start, making your bed by yourself, doing your chores, washing dishes, folding up your clothes, just little stuff to, start giving yourself some independence. But you're only you don't have just one option. After you graduate from high school, you do have the option to go to community college, and I mean, I am a huge advocate for going to community college because you'll get to stay close to your family and start doing that a slower transition into moving into doing things on your own, and you'll save
And,
a lot of money.
and you know, moving away from your family and taking on college, like those are huge, huge things, right? And so it is. It's you should be nervous, right? A little bit. It's exciting all at the same time too. And so if you know you're not ready, community college is a great way to go to get your bearings and understand how college works, because it does require a lot more independence. There's not someone who's, your teachers and your parents, they're not, well, maybe your parents will, but your teachers are not going to be there saying, Suchi, you didn't turn in your homework. You're just gonna fail your class if you don't turn in your homework. And so learning the independence within the college setting, it's a lot of work within itself. And so if you're not ready to be independent, living away from your family and then taking that on, it is a lot. And so I think it's good knowing that if you're ready or not before you do it, because to be honest, a lot of kids go away to college when they're not ready, and they move away from their family and they experience depression and they have a bad experience. And so that doesn't have to happen. And you just have to know to speak up and exploring right now, right? I think Coach Mouse said it earlier, but regardless of your age, whether you're 10 years old, 14, or 17, right now is the time to start planning and thinking about your education and employment. Because education isn't the only way you have to go. You could go to a trade school as well and learn a trade and then start working and earning money faster.
And this all really ties into all of our other coaches' talks, right? Our talks about hygiene and taking care of our bodies, because eventually, our parents aren't going to be here forever. And, we have to start learning our bodies and what our bodies need, nutrition wise, especially if you go off to college, it is really easy. You're like, oh, I can eat ice cream for breakfast, whenever I want, or I can have cold pizza for breakfast. And, you have the dining halls that you can go to. And it's really, really easy to kind of just, you know, use your freedom in a non-healthy way. So just getting into really good habits, as you begin to age. Because ice cream for breakfast every once in a while is okay, but not doing that every single morning.
And for those of you who maybe have parents that are listening, or even if your parents aren't listening, I think it's a great time for you to ask your parents, right? If you want to practice your independence, you've got to, let your parents know, like, hey, I actually like to, help make that meal, or help clean, or do my bathroom stuff myself, right? But and so, making sure you're asking for that independence, and that little bit of leeway to do some of that, so you can learn to do it now.
Did you say that you had a second question, Suchi?
Yeah, I did, but I just wanted to have you guys finish before I ask the second question. My second question is, when you do kind of go off, money, spending your money, trying to pay bills, how do you manage that when you first are living on your own and you don't have someone saying, this is the amount of money you have, use it wisely, because you are on your own, but you also have to do all these things that your parents usually do for you, like pay the water bill and get groceries and all the medical stuff that needs to happen.
My name's Coach Derek. No, actually, so Coach Derek wanted to be here, and he was actually going to be the one talking with Coach Mouse about some of this stuff, but he couldn't be here because he's got to be at work. And so he gave me a list. And so before we get into like all the different ways to fund college and to learn how to budget, when we talk about starting right now with your education and employment, right now is also that good time to learn how to budget, right? How many of you guys have a bank account, or a piggy bank even, or just a wallet with money? How many of you earn money by doing chores or other jobs around the house or for neighbors? I see a few hands. Well, so right now, related to not only working in employment, but earning money and learning how to budget and save and spend smartly. Is that a word? Smartly?
Wisely. Yeah, it is.
Wisely. Look for volunteer experiences. Ask to do chores around your house, and you could start learning some business skills by learning how to negotiate with your parents, right? About what kind of a payment will you get, right, for your chores, if any. And maybe if you don't get paid for chores, because sometimes you should just do stuff around the house for free, what things maybe could you do for friends or neighbors or people at church that would help you earn money, right? And so think about starting to earn money, or even when you're given money for a birthday present, think about how you set goals for that money, right? How do you want to spend it? How are you going to budget? How many of you save money for different toys or trips or things that you want to buy? How many of you do that now? See some hands. What about you, Kumaka, Joseph? Do you guys do that? Do you just spend all your money? No? Well, that's good. I did see some hands. So what are things, Camden, like that you save money for?
For some like games I sometimes buy on my Xbox. That's it.
Okay, nice. Devin, what about you? Do you save money for specific things?
I've saved up money for a lot of things, but like, one is I was getting like a new pair of shoes, so I saved up money to get those.
Nice, very nice. So when you move off to college or just move out of your house, right? You end up having to save money, your priorities change. So you have to then save money for different things. Some things that are not as fun, like paying the water bill, right? Having to have money and save money if you have a car, you have to put gas in the car to get to the fun places or maybe get to your job. So the priorities just change and you've got to factor in the not fun stuff along with the fun stuff. But then, okay, so then getting back to college, maybe Mouse, do you want to talk about money and how that works? And wait, because I know you moved away from your family and
Yeah, I graduated, and I had just turned 17, and I moved 12 hours away from my family, and it was hard. It was really hard. And since I was playing basketball, for a partial scholarship, my parents did give me X amount of money, to be able to, buy things like, breakfast bars and, for before practice and, snacks and stuff and just, small expenses that I had because I lived in the dorms. So I didn't have to worry about paying rent, or anything like that. But, they told me, once that money is gone, it's gone. We're not putting any more in there until the next month. Or if you receive like Social Security payments, you only get paid once a month. And so you kind of got to make sure that when you use your card or your cash at the store, writing down how much you just spent and how much you have left, balancing a checkbook if you have one. That makes things a lot easier to budget. And then once you do move out of the dorms, and into like an apartment, or if you're, renting a house, writing down how much your rent payment is, how much your projected utility bills are, and also not only keeping your money for fun stuff, but also not so fun stuff. So like if I need to call the plumber for the house, I got to have a little extra saved away. If I need to go, I got a flat on my car not too long ago and I had to go get it fixed. And so, just making sure that your, responsibility is really big. Being responsible for how much money that you have and then what you're using it for. So, yeah.
I mean, learning responsibility is a huge thing, right? How many of you do have weekly chores or daily chores? Raise your hand.
Oh, Aurora does.
She looks excited about hers. And I think that's fantastic that you guys, most of you have those responsibilities. If you do not, take some on yourself. Again, go, what Mouse had talked about earlier, right? Learn how to fold your own clothes. Learn how to use a washing machine.
Especially when you got accidents and stuff, and you feel a little embarrassed, that you can go and wash your own clothes and your own seat cushion without having to ask anybody for help.
Yeah. And, washing machines aren't always the most accessible. So, forever, we had a top loading washing machine. So I would literally kind of have to like jump on top and like when I was pulling my clothes out or, or to use the knobs that are really far away.
I did today.
But it's doable, right? Because we all do it. And so you can also learn how to do it. But take on some of those responsibilities and do some of those chores is really important. And for those of you who have your chores, Are you, what happens if you don't do your chores? Do you get in trouble?
There's some yeses, there's some
Some yeses.
Sometimes
Some
I don't
no's?
necessarily get in trouble. My parents are like, no, you don't get it this week, or like they don't even mention it, like they don't even talk about it. So I think that's part of it is if they don't even talk about it, it's like a reminder to myself, like I need to shape up. But most of the time I do my work, so it's all good.
And that's really similar to a job too, where if you don't do your work, you don't get paid.
Mhm.
You know?
And if you don't do your work, maybe because you're sick, if you can't do your chores because you're sick, do you tell your parents, like, hey, I can't do my work because I don't feel well? Do you guys ever do that?
Yes, no.
Some I see yes, some yeses, and some no's. So even for your daily chores, if by chance you're sick and you can't do them, right? You should just go ahead and say it anyway to your parents, even though they probably have figured it out, right? But it's called good communication, and that's part of your responsibility as someone who has a job. You've got to be able to say and communicate when things don't go right, or if they're even going great. You should communicate the good stuff too, right? But so even if you get sick and mom and dad, they know that you can't do your chores, you should say, oh, I can't do my chores today because I'm sick, but I will do them as soon as I feel better, right? Because that's exactly what you're going to need to do if you have a boss that's not your mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or whoever it is, right? You've got to have good communication, and it's good to practice it and learn it now. Because I'd say some of that real basic stuff, people don't do it anymore these days, and they're not good employees. I wouldn't hire them. Even for talking to your teacher, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes real stuff comes up when you can't get your homework done. And even right now, right? Like it's a really weird time, and even sometimes feeling depressed and you just can't do your homework. Like just have that offline conversation with your teacher to say, hey, I will get it done. I just couldn't today.
All right, awesome. So what did you want to talk about next?
What other questions do you guys have about either work or education? College, high school?
I think there was a question. Have you heard of TPP? What? No.
I've heard of OPP. Just kidding.
You know me.
Okay, now we're aging ourselves.
I don't know what TPP is.
What is it, Ernie? Oh, you're on mute, Ernie.
It's because he's a world traveler.
He is. But we can come back to it when he's off mute. And any other questions? I thought I saw a hand somewhere. Camden.
Which is like the best college to probably go to have like lots more adaptive sports and stuff?
Well, that's a great question. So it just depends really on what kind of sport that you're interested in. So like for basketball, per se, if you were to want to go to a wheelchair basketball school, you would have a lot of opportunities. You have 8 or 9 schools that you could pick. And I know that they're trying to start some programs over by you guys on the West Coast. And I know a lot of the stuff is on my side of the United States. But, if you're interested in a sport and you want to take it to the next level, like in college, every college has a website that you can check out. They have contact numbers, emails. I could help you because I know most of the people that are involved in the collegiate community, because I've been here for so long, just reaching out and, figuring out what kind of a place that you like. And once you start getting older, what you want to study. For example, I wanted to be a vet at first when I was starting to think about going to college, and that immediately put 2 colleges as a no for me because they didn't have any sort of a program like that. So, when you're older, doing things like a recruit trip, and like we talked about, communicating to the coaches, hey, I'm really interested in checking out your campus. Could I come for a visit? Different stuff like that. Getting involved in camps. All of for basketball, all of the colleges have camps during the summertime. And so, putting yourself out there. And this year, a lot of them are virtual. So if you just register with the program, then you can participate in their virtual camps. So, not a lot of colleges have adapted sports, which is really sad, but they are expanding all the time. So, and in your specific sporting community, they can also answer a lot of your questions as well.
And there's actually a bunch of sports too that you can look into that are just inclusive, right? So it doesn't matter if you have a disability or not. So when I water skied, I competed on my college team, but I was the only person with a disability. I know I just read about, like, on the East Coast, where they have some of the universities and colleges have equestrian teams. There's a girl who's in a wheelchair who competes on the equestrian team, so riding horses, and she's the only person with a disability on her team. And I don't know about like archery programs in colleges, Mayo, if there are any. Some might have recreation teams, and so they still compete, but it's just at a different level, and they get less money and whatever else. That was like my water ski team, but we still had nationals and all-stars at the collegiate level. It was just considered a rec team. So there are inclusive sports that you can participate in. Suchi.
Yes, Suchi.
One thing, when I was talking to my family, they were saying that you need to find college that fits you best, and I really take that to heart. But also another thing is, how do you balance schoolwork and sport or like a job? How do you manage that and use your time wisely and not overwork yourself?
Discipline.
Using, even now, do y'all use like assignment notebooks where it's got like a calendar in it, and then you write down when your homework is due or when your projects are due? Utilizing tools like that, making sure that you're setting reminders for yourself. Hey, I got that big paper due next week, Tuesday. I can't forget about that. Because it is really easy to just kind of get sucked into like college, and if you're doing a sport or if you're working, to kind of get run down by it and to just get really overwhelmed. So, we talked about budgeting your money, but budgeting your time, right? So maybe not so much going out every weekend, or every night, or, not staying up until 3 a.m. playing video games when you've got, some reading that you got to do for class tomorrow, or, what have you. So, and not being afraid to ask for help too. I know I really struggled my second year in college with balancing a lot of things. And I was actually academically ineligible because I really struggled, and then I didn't ask for help. So, if you're struggling in a class that like you have to take, saying, hey, going to your professor's office hours, finding a tutor. Most colleges, if not all, have tutoring centers, or you can even advertise on like a Facebook group for your college. Hey, I'm looking for a tutor for this class. You know, is there anybody available? You know,
You said
just
the term academically ineligible. So what does that mean, Mouse?
so in order to be academically eligible to play basketball at Alabama, I had to pass at least 24 hours. So that's 4 classes per semester. And I didn't do that. I failed a class, and so therefore I was not allowed to participate in the next year's basketball season.
So
Which is
just like in real life that you guys, I don't know, do you experience that right now in high school or junior high? If you get bad grades, there's repercussions, right? You can't go play certain things, or you can't play your video games. Do any of you guys experience that? See some hands? Or maybe you don't because you all get such good grades, right? But I think that was a great question, because the discipline and practicing time management is something that you guys should be doing now anyway, right? You know, for some of us who have maybe bathroom programs in the morning, you manage your time by waking up extra early so you can get your bathroom stuff done, right? Or if you know you have to shower in the morning, you get up at a certain time in order to have enough time to do that. You know, and in college, or if you start working, then you have definitely many other things that you have to balance within that time management things. So like even if you're having a hard time in a class, then all of a sudden, like Mouse mentioned, you might have to go to see a tutor. That's another thing to add into your schedule for that day. And so you've got to be very disciplined and responsible when it comes to that, right?
Yeah, so like something that I did was I got different colored pens, and I wrote down in my calendar I assigned a color for each class. And then for like social things, like if I had like a fundraiser that I had to go to for basketball, then that was in a different color. And so just looking at your upcoming week and seeing, you know, okay, so Monday I need to do reading in this class, and then I need to do some math homework, and then, you know, those are my tasks for the day. It just makes it seem a lot less overwhelming.
I love that you talk about using pens and paper. Do you guys have
Or do you guys use your phone?
like electronic ones and
Because I don't like
pen and
that.
paper?
If you are able to handwrite, you're more likely to remember it if you take
Yeah.
handwritten notes, or if you handwrite when your things are due. Just to keep in mind.
Even if you have terrible handwriting.
Jen gave us a
Well,
thumbs
then you
up.
can have to practice. What other questions do people have?
You know, it's seriously like a lot of you guys should. One thing I regret is not exploring other avenues outside of just going to college, like, or not even that. Other potential jobs or interests that I might have, right? So like currently I love using power tools and like working on furniture, building things, and that was something that I just did not do in high school. I didn't take wood shop or shop at all because I'm in a wheelchair, and you know, it was only the farmer kids that took that class. But I regret that I didn't do that, because I think I would have loved it, and maybe I would have ended up going a different route or something, you know. And so taking the time to explore different things while you can, you know, if your school you know, provides that class. If we remain on lockdown for a while, figure out, you know, look online at different things you might be interested in order to be able to explore, outside of just the normal things like graphic design or, becoming a teacher or a vet or whatever. Like, take the time to really explore different things and think outside the box, like Kumaka and Hunter, with your sports that you do now. Well, maybe, you've found that you love being like an announcer, or, maybe a manager for professional athletes, and so, like, what does that look like and how do you explore that? And start now at looking at some of that.
Yeah, take opportunities when you can, like when they present themselves to you. Like I know if you have like an IEP or a 504 plan in your school, they, if you ask, they can sometimes reach out to different businesses and you can go and job shadow for a day. Like I got to job shadow a veterinarian and I got to see some surgeries, which was pretty cool. And just different stuff like that, taking opportunities when they come up to you, and not just doing that, but asking. And like Coach Mayo says, internships, those are big. Those are really big, which is kind of like it, like an internship is kind of like a job.
Job experience.
Yeah.
And I know Ernie, we must have lost him, but he said the program TPP was like a job experience program, and they help you with job skills. And so, yeah, if you have that at your school or within your community, it's definitely something to sign up for and take advantage of, because Coach Mayo mentioned a resume. Who knows what a resume is? What is it, Hunter?
It's what you give to him. There's no job.
What's on it? What's on a resume?
Like your previous jobs and what you do in
Yeah.
school.
Yep. So did you everyone hear that? So on your resume, it's like a piece of paper and it says your previous jobs, where you've gone to school. You can write things like your experience and skills, right? So like Suchi, she's got really great tech skills, helped us out last night at skit night, telling people how to run Zoom, and that was awesome, right? So the resume, it's actually an impressive piece of paper. If one of you rocked up to a job, or you wanted to even volunteer somewhere, to be able to rock up to that job and have this piece of paper that says, my name is Camden, or my name is Devin. I go to this high school. I have skills in running computers. I know how to write, and you can say, like, even previous jobs, like, Camden, I've worked at the shoe factory or the tech company, right? It looks really impressive, and you guys can start that now. Oh, Coach Mayo.
I wanted to mention that when our son needed a babysitter about 3 years ago, when he first moved in, we reached out to the Nextdoor app to some kids and said, hey, we're looking for a babysitter, just afternoons, just some basic for some evenings. 3 girls showed up. 2 of them had resumes, and they were 13 and 14. So It doesn't matter how young you are or what's on your resume, because she was honest. I'm 13. I've taken some the babysitter training down at the local whatever. I know how to do X, Y, and Z, and blah, blah, blah. Hey, the fact that you had it on a piece of paper and you organized some information and you presented it to yourself, and this was it, we were so impressed with her. We hired her immediately, and then it was pretty good. We had another set of babysitters who showed up And they said, well, we're a package deal. There's two of us. So when you hire us, we're going to go ahead and we'll both show up. And I said, okay, I guess that kind of makes sense, but we didn't have to pay him as much. And it was a package deal. So they thought outside the box. They presented their whatever, and we said, sure. But that was a really interesting thing. But that resume really resonated with me.
That's so cool.
It was kind of cool.
And so another place, and some of you might be hooked up with them already, but it's the Department of Rehab, or I'm sorry, vocational rehab. And I know Mouse had some good information she was going to talk about related to that.
Yeah, so Voc Rehab is really cool. They will help you with a lot of financial stuff when it comes to paying for school. Like when I started getting ready to drive, I got into contact with Voc Rehab, and they connected me with a different rehab facility, and I got my driving lessons. They helped me get my hand controls, different stuff like that. But, it's never too early to start thinking about things like Voc Rehab, because for them to pay for different services, you do have to have a specific GPA. So, taking care of your grades in school. Oh, that's awesome, Aurora.
Oh, nice.
Good job. See,
She
like,
already has a resume, everyone. That's awesome.
yeah. So for here in Alabama, our Voc Rehab counselors actually will go into schools and individually speak with, I think the youngest that they start talking to is juniors in high school. But they'll lay out a plan. So if you want to go to college, you'll work with a specific counselor, and, you decide where you want to go. And then they can talk to you about how to best help you finance that and to best help you stay on track. If you don't want to go to college and you just want to go straight to a job, they also will help you find employment. So working on your resume, fine tuning your resume, making sure that it looks desirable to employers. And they'll even help, reach out to different job listings.
Some of them are connected to different companies and organizations within the community, so that they will help you if you're interested in a certain field to get that job experience there. So what they do fund is basically anything that helps you either attain your educational goals or your employment goals. So like paying for someone's hand controls or learning how to drive, if that's what gets you to school or to work, then that's what they will do. And it's not guaranteed that they will be able to pay for everything, right? Because I think maybe their budget can vary. But I know when I got help from them, when I was going to community college, they helped pay for the actual fees for the classes. They paid for my books, and they paid for a laptop for me to have so that I could do my homework. So it was excellent. I know a friend of mine got his van and his hand controls paid for, as well as his education.
I also wanted to mention that the more organized you are to come to a meeting with a Voc Rehab specialist person, the more motivated they are to help you. If you come to a meeting and you say, well, I kind of think I might want to do this and I kind of not sure, whatever, they're going to help you, but not as much as they're going to help you if you come with a plan and an idea of a plan or something on paper. You might want to go to college. I want to go to these 3 colleges, maybe. I don't know what it's going to look like, how I'm going to get there. I might have to work during. So if you come to the meetings with this stuff and you're ready to go.
And that even starts in school. So if you're able to attend your IEP meeting or your 504 meeting with your teachers about how to adapt your education for yourself, expressing to the people that are having that meeting, usually with your teachers and your parents, if you can, expressing what your long-term goals are, and what kinds of things, and y'all can talk about, what kinds of things, what can we do to help you, and, what can I do, as a person with a disability, what can I be doing on my end, to reach my long-term goals and my short-term goals as well. Suchi, did you have a question?
Yeah, so my question is, after college, you have to pay off debt and and all these expenses. So how do you manage to do that without, I don't know, like that just seems really hard to do, and my mom is still doing it and she says it's a pain, but she's doing it. So how do you go through that process?
Well, starts right now. Seriously, again, that's one of those things I wish, in hindsight, like getting scholarships so that you don't have to pay money back, right? Scholarships and grants. That's free money to help you go to school. So, looking for those now and looking at what are those requirements for those scholarships and and the different grants, right? Not all of them require you to be a 4.5 student. Not all of them are about grades. Some of them are, related to your different interests. If you're an FFA or an athlete or whatever, right? There's a lot of different opportunities for free money. And if you're interested in going to college, you should start looking right now and figuring out, and again, and that takes time management to write out a good application for that money, right? Because you don't just get it, you have to apply for it. So thinking ahead, planning, looking at what scholarships are available and how you're going to write them. Do you have to get letters of reference? All sorts of things that you have to think about. So planning ahead and trying to get as much money to help you now is important. And then I had to use financial aid, and some of that is free money and some of it is stuff that you have to pay back. So Coach Mayo just put in the chat box a link to studentaid.gov, which talks about financial aid and maybe some of the different grant programs. So there's the difference between the money you pay back and the money that's free and you don't have to pay back. And so knowing the difference, I was a poor kid and didn't have a whole lot of help from my mom, and even trying to figure out and understand a lot of that paperwork is super hard. So again, starting that now is important. And sorry, go ahead, Mouse.
No, I just said that it was a lot. And, once you're out of college, communicating, if you do have loans, communicating with, your loan lender, saying, hey, here's my budget. Is there a way for me to reduce my monthly payments? If you need to. I know I needed to do that because I wasn't making a lot of money at my job, because I took some time off, and I couldn't make the monthly payments and still pay rent and eat. So, if you're just communicating, with those companies, we talked about communication, saying, hey, I don't have that money. So can we work out something where, I can pay this much, that's in my budget, just communicating.
And the other cool thing is, depending on what field you go into, so like myself and Jen Taylor there, we both work at colleges, right? And if we teach for a certain amount of time, then a certain amount of our loan gets paid back. Or my cousin, he's a dental hygienist, and if you work in communities that are considered poor, so like he works at a Native American health clinic, and so he gets like a big portion, well, not enough though, but a big portion of his loans paid off. And so there are different avenues beyond just, you know, paying out of your paycheck, but there's other opportunities that you can take and look into to help pay off those loans faster. The best thing is, you know, try to keep your loan amounts down as much as possible. Sometimes it's not possible, but depending on what you want to do and where you want to go. I know that, oh, Jen just said that's another really great reason to look at community colleges. I think in California, the community colleges are free for like a huge group of students. So you could actually go to a community college and get your education free. And Mayo just said work study. So there's opportunities on different campuses to work on campus. And then you get certain things paid for or covered while you're studying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if you have a disability or are on SSI or SSDI, your community college fees are reduced a ton. I think mine were like almost like $12 a class or something, but that was a very long time ago. It was $12 a unit, but whatever. It was really cheap.
Now, what other questions do people have? I know we kind of gone a little bit over time. Anything else? Any
What who's planning already? Who's already looked into places or jobs? What about what are some of your plans, Suchi, or thoughts?
So some of my plans are just volunteering, getting experience with helping with around the community. Last year I helped in a home center, and that was interesting, and just trying to figure out what I'm interested in. I also missed at colleges and looking at what they have to offer. That's my main goal in process, and not feeling like I have to go to like a famous school that everyone's heard of, like Harvard or Yale or like all of those big schools, because even the smaller, not well-known schools are just as good, not if better for you. And just trying to figure out where do I fit into, what will make me a better person, how will I fit into this community.
Come to Chico State, it's flat and cheap. Actually, no, but really, so I think that was a great, one of the things you said made me think of something. So when I was in high school, I was in a program called Upward Bound, and a lot of, they're regional, but we had a program here in Chico, and it was a great opportunity. So in high school, so I went to summer school, right? Who wants to go to summer school? But it was actually a lot of fun. And so you got to live just kind of like we do at camp, right? We got to live in the dorms. We went to our classes just almost like a college kid, but we were in high school. And then they also took us on trips around California to explore different colleges. So just like what you're talking about, Suchi, that you've been able to do, we went and did college tours. It's a great program. And even so, as people with disabilities, we are eligible for that program because we're considered underserved and underrepresented. So it's something that you should look into. And Jen said Summer Bridge. It's very similar to the high school program, but it's for new college kids. And so you get to go live on that college campus ahead of time. And they also give you help all throughout the year. Both of those programs for the high school kids and the college kids, they're called trio programs, and they're within the same family. Anyway, but they're excellent programs for you all to look into if you're interested in going to college. And you make friends. Like my sister, she is still really good friends with one of her friends from Summer Bridge. And that was like 25 years ago. Oh my God. And one of my best friends from Upward Bound is Miss Sugar from RuPaul's Drag Race. Or what's his name? I don't even know what his name is.
That's fantastic.
He's fantastic. Yeah.
I love it.
So those
Tons
are great programs.
Sources. Tons. All right. That's
No other thoughts? Come on, one more. Devin, what are you going to do?
I don't know.
Do you have
Yours-
ideas though? Like,
I could see you as a sports announcer, Devin.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Be on ESPN.
do you, what about, like, do you guys want to, like, Kumaka or Camden or Olivia, do you guys want to do you think you want to start off staying close to home, or are you guys excited to go away?
I'm excited to go away.
Just go to,
Sometimes you just got to do that. Sometimes that's what's best for yourself.
I think I might go to SCSU near me.
Nice, very cool. What were you going to say, Olivia?
For me, I'm probably gonna do like 2 years community college, and then hopefully I'll head up to Sonoma State. So I'm actually not that far from Sonoma, but it'd be far enough to start new. My dad wants me to move into dorms, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, dorms are great. They can be. Then you get to learn how to live with other people. Roommates are fun. If you ever want any good roommate stories, I've got you.
But yeah, no, because my grandpa, I think like most of his families were teachers, and so he knows a little bit about that. So within Sonoma State, there's like the humanities college, and since that's the field that I basically want to go into, that's why I want to go. Of course, my dad wants me to go to like Berkeley or something. I don't care. And of course, another thing is like, you're going to go to community college, and then you're going to be like, oh, like go into the work field and then forget all about college for the next like 30 years. I'm just like, oh my God, Dad. He never went to college. He never graduated high school. So.
But I think that's great, because so you've got some insight and thoughts about where you want to go, and and you've got that insight about what college is a good college for if you want to be a teacher. So I think it's a great start. And again, yeah, lots of people are going to have opinions about what you should do and where you should go, but you've got to do what's right for you and what you're comfortable with.
Yeah. Of course, so the Boys and Girls Club, I'm hoping to get a summer job there, actually. So.
And I think so using your connections, a lot of times getting a job and job experience, it's about who you know, and reaching out to those people, not being embarrassed or, shy about it, right? Scotty at Boys and Girls Club, and he's offered you to come volunteer. And did you start volunteering already there, Olivia?
Not yet. Yeah, I know. I actually worked so I'm just reading what Coach Mayo said. So I did work at CARD for 3 years, so I was able to put down that experience. So I'm ready to have a change of pace.
Yeah. That's
So,
awesome.
but yes, I'm aware. And I also, my mom got me hooked up on Indeed to look for like babysitting and whatnot. So I do have a resume on there as well. So I'm actually getting ready to get a job so that I can pay for gas in a car that I don't have quite yet, but I will at some point.
I love it, the goals. And look at it, she's taken those steps to get there, right? She got a job. She had a job for 3 years. She's got a resume. She's posted the resume. She's using her contacts and she's thinking about what she needs money for and how to get it so that she can have her car to be independent. That's awesome.
Yeah. And since I'm left-footed, we're thinking about getting an adaptation where it like, because you were talking about that, you showed us that where it like swaps the brakes. That was interesting. Like
Nice.
the brake and the gas. That was intriguing.
What's your question, Emily?
I don't have a question, but I actually had a job before 2 weeks before COVID started. I worked at Petco.
Oh, nice. What'd you do there?
Just cleaned and organized.
And how did you get that job?
I got it through school. There's a program for people with special needs where they hook you up with like a good job like close to your home, and they go to the places, so they give you options if you want to work in like a restaurant or if you want to work in a clothes store or an animal store. And I chose animals because I love animals. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to try the animal thing. And I was like, and then 2 weeks later, COVID happened. I'm like, wow. And I really liked it.
Hopefully
But
you can go back. That would be great.
I actually can't go back because I'm not in high school anymore.
Yeah. Well, maybe
Actually-
Petco will hire you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Look at Mayo just said, stay in touch with your manager.
Yeah.
Right? Keep that what we were talking about earlier was communication. So keeping that communication open, and just even if it's an email or a phone call saying, hey, I just wanted to say hi and see how you're doing. And hey, I'm still interested in a job if, once this craziness ends.
Don't be afraid to apply to things that, even if you're like, I don't know if I'm going to get this, apply to it anyways, because you never know. If you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Yeah.
And just to let all of us, well, as women especially, but even I think all people with disabilities, we don't maybe sell ourselves well enough. And selling yourself is half the battle too, to getting a job. And we have a saying in our world of academia where fake it until you make it. And so it means basically that you just have, even if you don't feel confident, just pretend that you are, all right? Right? And actually, even being an athlete, when you're on the court or competing, when I was competing in water skiing, you always had to take that negative talk out of your head and just focus on, what you were going to do, and that you were confident and you were going to win, right? So you got to have that attitude, even in your education or your employment. Fake it until you make it. Right, Coach Anthony? Any other final thoughts, or what were you going to say, Mal? Sorry.
I was just saying, don't be afraid to ask. I lost my job also because of COVID. And I was in for a job interview. I work at Target right now. And during my interview, the person who was interviewing me was like, what kinds of things do you need in order to be successful here? And I was like, well, if I'm going to be working at a cash register, I'm going to need a tall chair. And so, you know what we did? We went back to where the tall chairs were, and they built me one so I can reach and everything like that. Just not being afraid to say, hey, this is what I need, and that's what will make me successful, which if I'm successful, then you're successful as a company. So
I love it.
this was a great talk, you guys. This was awesome. We learned some stuff. We got lots of resources, lots of links. It's awesome.
Can I say something that's not exactly related to education? So Mouse pointed it out because sometimes I can't hide my face. But so a lot of like, especially at school and different areas of life, people will use the term special needs. And as a person, so there's a lot of different things with language, right? There's identity first language and there's person first language. When I'm talking to my friends, I prefer identity first. So that means I'm a disabled person, not a person with a disability. But that one those don't even bug me as much as when people say special needs. We have different needs, but we're disabled people. And so we're not like necessarily special needs. Everyone has special needs, right? Or just they're different. And so we should encourage people to use the language that we as a disabled culture and community are comfortable with. And so it's just something for you young people to start thinking about is your language in our culture, because it is a culture. So not that, and Emily, so not that I'm not picking on you, but it's the terms that it's used in education all the time. The special needs program or special education. But just for you guys to start thinking about what you're comfortable with, what you like people to, the terms that you like people to use, and then trying to, educate people on that.
Yeah, because we're always telling you guys to advocate for yourselves. If a term like that, like Carrie expressed, special needs is not really something that she likes to hear, and so she vocalized it and told us why and different words to use instead. So that's a really great example of advocating for yourself. Yeah, Emily.
What's your comment, Emily?
I actually have a comment related to kind of like that. So when I'm like talking to someone, they're always like, they try to get down to my level. So like I'm in a wheelchair, obviously. So they try to get down their knees and like try to talk to me like this, and it drives me nuts when people do that. Like, I don't know if it drives anyone else nuts, but yeah.
Yeah. So it's doing something instead, when somebody tries to do that to you, you say, that's okay. I can hear you just fine when you're standing upright, advocating for yourself, saying, I'm uncomfortable, especially now being in my face.
Yeah.
I can still hear you.
No, the person's not in my face. They just get down to my level, and I'm just like, can you just stand like a normal person, please?
Yeah, and sometimes people think that like, oh, like I have to do that. But, if you say, hey, it's okay. You can just stand up. I can hear you just fine. We can have a conversation like that. You don't need to lean down.
Hey, Aurora's agreeing. And how many people like yell at you and you have to be like, well, no, I can understand and hear you just fine. Like, no need to yell.
And they also like talk slower to me if I don't understand what they're saying. And I'm just like, you just look really dumb. Like, I don't tell them that, but I just give them a look like they look really dumb the way they're speaking to me, because I'm a normal person. Like, I understand.
What were you going to say, Suchi?
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to ask one more question.
Yeah.
You probably, I don't know if you touched on this, but you guys kind of cut out earlier and I got kicked out, but I digress. Majors, my mom tells me a lot that you can change your major when going into college, but it is also hard to change your major because there are different responsibilities and requirements with changing your major, and how, if you want to change your major, how do you handle the difficulty of changing and transitioning into a different major?
So there's a lot of different factors that come into it, right? Because I know that different programs or majors in school, right? Some of them are very popular, and so that they're almost overcrowded, and so getting classes sometimes is difficult. If you want to change your major, the other piece of it that comes into play is the cost, right? Because depending on how long you've been in school, say if you go to school for 2.5 years and then you're like, oh, I really don't like being a PE major anymore, I want to become a veterinarian, right? Well, you've just spent 2.5 years taking classes that you don't need for the vet program, so you're basically starting over. And so then you have to pay for all the new classes that you are going to take. And so you're just, it's expensive. And then you're extending the amount of time that you're in college as well.
Yeah, like I changed my major. I was going to be a vet, and then I changed it to education, which the vet to a biology teacher was about the same types of classes. But then I'm not going to lie to you, I did not do very well in organic chemistry. I could not pass that class. I took it twice and I dropped it the first time, and then the second time I just straight up failed it. So I was like, well, I think I got to find something else. And so I like to read, so I switched to English language arts, and it did put me a little bit behind, but also since it was still kind of like in the College of Education, a lot of my credits and stuff were fine to roll over. But that's why, you know, community college, you can figure out the kinds of stuff that you like. You know, you get your prereqs out of the way, you know, your math and, you know, your English and your histories and all that good stuff. And they usually will roll over if you do decide to transfer to a 4-year university or college. Yeah, Emily.
Oh, that's so funny because I was actually gonna major in vet tech, but then my teacher, she was like, you know, if you pursue vet tech, you're gonna probably have to deal with putting the animal down. And I was like, okay, then I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna change of what I want to be when I'm well, at the time when I was gonna be done with high school, but now I'm done, and so I decided to do ASL interpreter.
Yeah.
Because I know like maybe 3 people that are deaf.
Mm-hmm.
One of them goes to my school. One of them was in my dance program over here by my house, and then another one was actually at camp. Nicholas.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot his last name, but yeah.
Yeah.
And it's actually a really cool language that they speak.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. This was very productive talk. Coach Mayo, did you have something that you wanted to say earlier?
I forgot. If you change your major within the college, then you do have to think about, just like Coach Carey was mentioning, did the classes that you already take apply to the new major that you've chosen? So that's what Coach Carey covered. If you change your major and go to another college and bring your classes that you've taken over from old college to new college may not accept the classes that you've already taken at old college. So just food for thought. Be careful about doing that. I did that. I had to retake a crazy amount of stuff from going from UC Davis to Sac State because they did not accept a lot of stuff, and it was a little crazy. But just something to think about. So if you're going to make that change, really think about it. Like, do I really want to do this or not?
lot of decisions to make. So much. Yeah, Coach Anthony.
Oh, we can't hear you. No.
No. Mm-mm. Are your headphones or something connected to it, or you want to type it and we can say it out loud?
He's on his iPad.
Aw.
Oh.
But yeah, that's why exploring
He-
right now
He's
is
probably
that's why
he's on
exploring
mute.
no, he just turned himself on mute. Exploring right now is important, and getting different experiences and job experiences. You know, a lot of people think they want to be physical therapists, and then they actually shadow a physical therapist and they're like, this is mind-numbingly boring, and then they don't want to be physical therapists anymore. You know, and so it's important to definitely do your exploring now, reach out to those people who you think you want to be, and get that experience.
Yay for trying new things.
Yay!
Know what we like.
At 2:00, we have wheelchair skills with Coach Derek. Who knows what he's gonna be doing? Oh yes, Emily.
I thought it was Coach Christian.
Yeah, well,
Chair skills.
he couldn't be with us today because I think he's like on a tuna boat, driving a tuna boat or something.
Doing some cool stuff.
Can't hear you, Anthony. No. I think, uh-oh, did I say a bad word?
Of course not. Anthony would never.
Yeah.
Sign language. But, all right. Well then,
I'm hungry.
you all are more than welcome to reach out to any of us coaches or Ability First staff, because, you know, even your counselors, they've all been in college for a long time, and now a lot of them are in jobs. So, you know, reach out to any of them. A lot of them have connections too to different people and things, and
Yeah, networking.
yeah.
All the people that you know at camp, you know, that's networking.
Mhm. All right.
Bye. See you in a bit.
Bye, everyone. This was a great talk.